And let me get to fact or fiction. It starts there. Alan Hahn, I'll start with you. If I said to you, SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the MVP, is going to be the face of the league if OKC wins the title, is that fact or fiction?
It's fiction, and can we stop with the face of the league? LeBron James is the face of the league until otherwise notified. He's still playing. He's still in the league. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wins a championship, gets Finals MVP. He'll have one of the great seasons we've seen in a long time. He'll be an all-time season player, but not a face of the league. No.
We're going to dive into that, despite your reservations about it, a little bit later. In the meantime, Jay Will, if I said the Thunder are going to shut down Tyrese Halliburton in the finals, is that fact or fiction?
Greeny, I would say fact here. Look, you're talking about historically one of the best defenses the league has ever seen. And by the way, Lou Dort would be a safety essentially in the NFL, or even a bigger, 6'4", 215 pounds, with the size frame he has between Lou Dort, between Alex Caruso, Casey Wallace. They have all the pieces to stop Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, he's a linebacker, man. He's like an undersized linebacker. Bobby, if I said the Knicks, they were the last team to fall before the finals. If I said they need to go out and do whatever they can to get Giannis to have a chance to win the title next year, is that fact or fiction?
Greeny, as great as Giannis is, I am on team continuity when it looks like for New York. And I say that's fiction. When you look at the Knicks, 7 of their top 7 players are under contract next year. They need to go out and trim around the edges, improve that bench, trust that bench, figure out what you're doing with Mikal Bridges, who's extension eligible, and also Mitchell Robinson.
Go a little deeper into that, if you will, here, because you were telling us this morning that in the East right now, that does not feel like making the big move, making the big change, even for a player like Giannis, is the one to do?
No, I agree. Yeah, there is going to be so much volatility in the Eastern Conference this offseason when you look at Boston, when you potentially look at what happens in Milwaukee. The Knicks, as constructed right now, are a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference with Indiana and Cleveland. They just need to improve that bench. And certainly with Giannis, listen, they're going to be one of 29 teams that are going to make a phone call if he does become available. But I just think when you look at how this roster is constructed right now, what it would take to get him and what basically dismantle this roster, I'm more on the continuity factor.
Alan?
Come on. When you have an all-time great available, I feel like, Bobby, you've got to do whatever it takes. You find a way, somehow, some way, because if you don't get him, maybe somebody else in the East does, and that changes everything. I understand the continuity part of it. I understand that's what the Knicks want. But I also know it's the Knicks. It's the biggest market, and he's a superstar. He's an MVP finalist 7 years running. He's one of the best players in the league. And when you're trying to end over a half a century of not winning a championship, you got to figure out a way. Bobby, there has to be an avenue to getting Giannis Antetokounmpo if he wants to play for the Knicks.
Well, Bobby, what is that avenue?
Well, I would say this. Listen, they're almost in an identical spot where they were last September before they made that Karl Anthony Towns trade. They've got 1 pick. That's from the Wizards. We don't even know if that's going to convey because it's top 8. So now you're looking at remove Jalen Brunson, likely remove Karl Anthony Towns from the equation. You're looking at a combination of OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, Mitchell Robinson there. That is a lot to go out and do it. And then you got to look at it from Milwaukee's perspective. Is that even good enough compared to what they can get from other teams?
Jay Will, final word. Giannis, yay or nay for the Knicks?
I think, look, building around the margins, I like the thought for Bobby, depending upon how much value you have to extract. The only thing I would say to New York fans is, as I look across this league, there aren't too many players that are New York City. And Giannis is one of those guys. And I know they're close to winning a world championship, but I'm not sure they're as close as they think they are consistently, considering the way the body types are of Karl Anthony Towns and, once again, Jalen Brunson for the long term. That is a question a lot of fans have to ask themselves. Is this in the best interest for us long term, considering injuries and other things that could occur?
So close and yet so far away. Back on Get Up, bottom of the hour. Here's a Pacers fan who really enjoyed this moment from Tyrese Halliburton, recreating the iconic Reggie Miller choke celebration. Game 1 versus the Knicks will live forever on his calf. It was the moment that tied the game, Allen, and sent it to overtime. and now it will live forever on that man's leg. Your thoughts?
Wear long socks. Like, what are we doing?
Jay Will, your thoughts?
My face is my thought, Greeny.
It's a good one.
Confused.
It's also what I mean. What do we? How are we modeling this exactly? Like, if that panned up, what do we think we're wearing here? It's a very strange look. Everything about this is disturbing.
And do more calf raises.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. Just get this off the screen. Let's go to literally anything, and we'll call it question marks for Bobby Marks. For some of the most glamorous franchises in the NBA, the offseason has long since begun. And so our front office insider, Bobby, is gonna break it all down for us. And Bob, let's start in Boston. I feel like the Celtics are the most interesting team because they have the most complicated set of decisions. I remind everyone, lest they have forgotten, that they are probably looking at an entire season now without their best player next year. So what should we anticipate the offseason looking like for the Celtics?
Greeny, I think there's three different options that Boston's going to be looking at this offseason here. The first, and it's probably the most unlikely, is basically running this group back, bringing back Al Horford and Luke Kennett, who are free agents. The cost, however, is going to be over $500 million when you look at salary and luxury tax penalties. There'll be a second apron team again. That's unlikely here. The second is the cost-cutting measure. Remember, $23 million over the second apron. How do you get under? Is it moving off Kristaps Porzingis? This is not a market where there are a lot of teams that have money to absorb it, potentially a player like Drew Holiday also. And then the third is the reset roster. Remember, as you said, Jason Tatum is likely going to be out for an extended period of time. Do you take a gap year? That would start certainly with a player like Jaylen Brown, where you're basically retooling the roster on a potential Jaylen Brown trade and then focusing on the 2026-27 season. The hard part is, and what you have to remember, is that Jason Tatum is going into year one of this Supermax. Derek White is entering year one. You still have to have a sustainable roster when Tatum returns from this injury.
What are the Celtics? What is your expectation, Alan, for the Celtics in the near future? And by that, I guess I really mean the year after next when Tatum is back.
Year after next is when I think that's when I'm with Bobby. I think the third option is the one you got to think about because
trading Jaylen Brown.
No. The third option is resetting the roster. I wouldn't trade Jaylen. To me, you keep these two guys together.
Well, then what would constitute resetting the roster?
Everybody else. You build around them again because they are getting older. Al Horford, by the way, 39th birthday today. Happy birthday, Al. But it's like, you're getting older. Those two guys are in their prime. You've got to continue to build around them, but you can't build with older, more expensive players. You need a year to do that. It's okay to take that kind of gap year. I love the way Bobby phrased that. And you can still be a play-in team in the East because the East isn't really that good. So you have enough there that you can make a push, still be a play-in team, but also move on from some older pieces, reset your roster knowing you still have two centerpieces to build around.
Jay Will.
I feel like with every time we talk about Boston, Giannis's name comes up. I mean, Giannis's name is going to come up with every team, everybody